For centuries, colonies failed. Ships sank, crops died, people starved. But even the worst disasters left something behind. Ruins, bones, graves. This one didn't. There were no bodies, no remains, no burial grounds, just silence. When later expeditions returned to the settlement, they found no signs of struggle, no evidence of massacre, and no indication of sudden flight. The buildings were dismantled carefully. Valuable supplies were taken. Defensive structures were removed methodically. Whoever left this place did not flee in panic. They vanished deliberately. And the deeper investigators searched, the more disturbing the truth became, because even death itself seemed to have been erased. The story begins not with mystery, but with ambition. In the late 16th century, England was desperate to expand beyond Europe. Spain dominated the seas. France was probing the New World. England feared being left behind, both economically and militarily. Colonization was no longer a gamble. It was a necessity. The land across the Atlantic promised everything England lacked: timber, land, trade routes, and prestige. But reaching it was one thing. Surviving there was another. The first English settlements failed quickly. Disease, starvation, poor planning, and conflict with native peoples destroyed early attempts almost as soon as they began. Still, England pressed forward. Eventually, a small group of settlers was sent to establish a permanent colony on the eastern coast of North America. The site was chosen for its defensibility, access to fresh water, and proximity to trade routes. On paper, it was ideal. In reality, it was isolated. The colonists arrived with limited supplies and depended entirely on resupply from England, a journey that could take months and was never guaranteed. Storms, piracy, and war all threatened the fragile lifeline connecting the colony to the world it left behind. From the beginning, things went wrong. Relations with local tribes were tense. Food shortages became routine. Leadership disputes weakened morale. The colony survived, but only barely. Eventually, the governor returned to England to secure desperately needed supplies and reinforcements. It was meant to be a short trip. But Europe had other plans. War broke out. Ships were seized for military use. Sailors were conscripted. The Atlantic crossing became nearly impossible. What should have taken months stretched into years. When the governor finally returned, he expected relief mixed with hardship. What he found instead was nothing. The settlement was empty. Homes stood abandoned. Some structures had been dismantled. No signs of violence marked the ground. No burned buildings. No weapons scattered. No bodies. Even more unsettling, there were no graves. In a colony plagued by disease and starvation, death would have been inevitable. Children, elderly settlers, the sick, all should have left behind burial sites. But the land showed no such evidence. It was as if everyone had simply stood up one day and walked away. The only clue was a single word carved into a post, and another, partially carved into a nearby tree. They were not cries for help. They were not warnings. They looked like directions. At first, the assumption was relocation. Perhaps the settlers had moved inland or joined a friendly native tribe. The carvings may have been meant as a message, an explanation, rather than a distress signal. But follow-up expeditions found nothing. No trace of English settlers living among the tribes. No European artifacts. No oral histories describing a group of foreigners arriving en masse. It was as though the colony had dissolved into the landscape. Speculation exploded. Some believed the settlers had been absorbed peacefully into local communities. Others believed they were killed quietly and systematically. There were theories of disease outbreaks so severe that survivors chose to abandon the settlement entirely. But none explained the missing graves. In every known colonial disaster, bodies remained. Even mass deaths left scars on the land. Burial grounds, mass graves, markers of some kind. Here, there was nothing. Archaeologists searched for decades. Excavations turned up fragments, tools, pottery, signs of occupation, but no cemetery, no evidence of mass death, which raised a disturbing possibility. What if the colonists didn't die there at all? What if the settlement was emptied slowly over time? Not by force, but by choice. As supplies dwindled and England failed to return, the colonists may have realized something grim. No one was coming. The settlement was never self-sufficient. It depended on resupply that might never arrive again. Staying meant slow death. Leaving meant uncertainty, but also survival. If the colonists chose to abandon the settlement gradually, they may have taken their dead with them, buried them elsewhere, or followed native burial customs, or dispersed in small groups rather than moving as one. That would explain the absence of graves. But it raised another question. Why did they never return? Why was there no trace of their descendants? Time passed. The colony became legend. Writers embellished the story. Theories multiplied. Some blamed secret attacks. Others whispered of curses, poison, or betrayal. But the truth may be far more unsettling than violence. The colony may have failed quietly. No dramatic massacre, no final stand, no heroic last moments, just hunger, isolation, and the slow realization that survival meant erasing themselves. If the settlers integrated into local populations, they would have shed their English identity to live. Language would change. Customs would fade. Names would disappear. Within a generation, they would no longer be colonists. They would simply be gone. This theory troubles historians more than any tale of slaughter. It suggests that an entire English community willingly abandoned its culture to survive, and that history never noticed. Even more disturbing is how easily this could happen. Colonial ventures were fragile experiments. Success depended on timing, weather, politics, and luck. Remove one element, and the entire system collapsed. The abandoned colony stands as proof that failure doesn't always leave ruins. Sometimes it leaves absence, and absence is harder to explain. Modern investigations continue to search for clues, DNA links, artifact trails, subtle patterns in indigenous records, but certainty remains elusive. What we know is this: the colony existed. It struggled. It was abandoned. And the land reclaimed it completely. No monuments mark the spot. No headstones record the names. No memorial lists the dead. The colonists are not remembered as individuals. They are remembered as a question. A reminder that history does not always end in fire or blood. Sometimes it ends in silence. And silence can erase everything, even the dead.